What is up, ladies, gentlemen, listeners of the Didn't Ask podcast? Welcome back to another episode of this right here podcast, the Didn't Ask podcast. How is everybody doing? Did you have a good weekend? I certainly did. It was a race weekend after a week off. It was a race weekend and that was very exciting. It was the race of Azerbaijan at Baku circuit. It's a street circuit, which is a very nice thing because that means that there are always fun things happening at the street circuit because there's very little room for error, which means that all drivers have to be perfect, and if something goes wrong, it could seriously go wrong. Luckily, there wasn't that many things that were going like absolutely bad. It was not a great weekend for Ferrari though, who had two cars fill their engine, and then technically also a Ferrari, the Haas of Kevin Magnussen, also shut down, which is also a Ferrari engine. So there was something going on with the Ferrari engine that maybe it wasn't handling the heat very well or something like that. I don't know what it is precisely, but I hope they figure that out because they are throwing away a lead in the championship in both the constructors as the drivers. So man, there needs to be some work done over there in their camp. And it was also a weekend for UFC with UFC 271. I say from the top of my head, I am not sure what the number officially is. Live from Singapore. And man, that was an amazing card as well with some fun fights. We of course had the rematch between Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang Weili, which, man, these two fucked each other up in the first fight they had, which was absolutely amazing. Joanna Jędrzejczyk looked completely different after that fight. People were making jokes that she looked like Roger from American Dad because her face was so mangled by Zhang Weili. Luckily, that wasn't the case this time, but sadly, she didn't come away with the win. She got knocked out, which is the first time I believe she has been knocked out like that. And yeah, it's a sad thing. And she immediately retired, which is always very sad. And also, I mean, it's also kind of glad that she's doing it this way, that she's saying like, hey, I'm going to throw the towel in and I'm going to start making a life for my own. I'm a big fan of Joanna, so best of luck in your retirement, Joanna. And, hit me up. We can hang out or something like that. You know what I mean? If you're into it, we can hang out. So hit your boy up. We also had the championships fights between Shevchenko and Santos, which, man, that was a great back and forth. And Santos had a broken orbital bone, which is really bad as well. I think she went to the hospital straight after and got that treated. So hopefully she heals up nicely. Sadly, didn't come away with the win, even though I personally think that she had won the fight because she was taking Shevchenko down constantly and keeping her tied up for all these things. But the judges score things differently than the fans do most of the time at this point. So yeah, good to see Shevchenko get away with the win. And that means he can add another ruby to her belt. And somebody who won't be adding a ruby to their belt would be Glover Teixeira, who took on Jiří Procházka in an exhilarating 5-round fight. And the winner got decided in the last 30 seconds of the fight, which is absolutely crazy. You rarely see that happening. But Jiří Procházka got away with the win by a rear naked choke, which is very interesting because Glover Teixeira was doing, grappling and jiu-jitsu constantly throughout the fight. But he was getting some success in the later rounds 4 and 5, with his stand-up, but still decided to go low and go for the takedowns, for the grappling, which wasn't that smart of an idea, especially with the finish being a rear naked choke while at a kneeled position. So yeah, so many fun fights on that card. I'm looking very much forward to the next coming weeks because every week there is a big fight coming up with, of course, fight week in July, where we have Jared Cannonier fighting Israel Adesanya, which is going to be a fun fight, as well as Alexander Volkov versus Max Holloway for the third time, which to me, again, is very similar to the Santos-Shevchenko fight. There was some discrepancy in the judging of these fights with Max Holloway and Alexander Volkov. So let's see how they're gonna do. I personally think that Alexander Volkov has grown since becoming a champion. He has grown so tremendously fast and so tremendously large that I think this could be a really hard fight for Max Holloway, or harder than it was the first two. But who knows? We shall see what that will bring. Well, this is not a sports podcast. This is the Didn't Ask podcast, where I, Djimon, dive into the world of Reddit to see what the people asked Reddit and didn't ask me. So let's jump into the first question coming from the Ask Reddit subreddit, coming from user Saxon underscore 88, and they ask, the people in the hotel room next to you are having really loud, obnoxious sex. How do you ruin the mood? We've all been here. Like, I have been here at a certain point in time, basically daily, where my neighbors upstairs were having very loud sex, and I was waking up multiple times by them in the middle of the night. And there's very little you can do. You can fucking start yelling at them, but the chances are they probably won't hear it. But when I saw this question, I was thinking like, okay, how can we make this a little funny? Because that's of course what we're all looking at. We want to make this shit funny. We want them to stop, maybe not even having sex, but just being so loud. So I was thinking like, hey, maybe just put on the Teletubbies intro like really loudly, so that they think that there is a kid or something in the other room, and that they get put off by that. So that's basically where my head was going, just to play Teletubbies or another kids thing, TV show or movie, whatever, that has a very iconic soundtrack, and then just play that very loudly so that they think that there is a kid on the other side of the wall, and then thinking that, oh my god, there is a kid, maybe we should go a little softer in our volume. I looked at the comments of this question, and there is one amazing comment left by user Farnecker, and that is VARNECR, and they said, had this happened to a buddy while in college, not a hotel room but a thin apartment wall. They kept having loud, obnoxious sex until he yelled, "Don't stop, I need this." They quit right after. That is such a fucking amazing story. That's a fucking amazing line to use. So that is probably the next one that I will use. When I hear people having sex, I will just yell very loudly, "Don't stop, I need this." And then hopefully they'll stop. It's that reverse psychology. So yeah, going back to your question, Saxon underscore 88, the people in the hotel room next to you are having really loud, obnoxious sex. How do you ruin the mood? Again, for me, first up was play the Teletubbies theme very loudly over the speakers so that they can hear it, and then think that, oh my god, there is a kid in the next room, so maybe we should quiet down a little bit. But what Far Necker said, to just yell, "Don't stop, I need this," that's fucking amazing. So thank you for your question, Saxon, and thank you for your answer, Far Necker. Going on to the second question of today, coming from user underscore Mr. underscore Cheeks, and they ask, you're stuck for 24 hours in the last game you have played. What will you be doing during this time? I've been playing a couple of games at the moment, but the last game I played was Horizon Forbidden West, and I am absolutely loving this game. I have talked about this game on the podcast before, and I personally, I cannot stop playing this game. One, because it is so fucking big, but two, it's because I just like to do everything and then collect items to upgrade my gear, and then go to a side quest, and then I go back to another village, and then there are new side quests, and then do those, and then keep running around the whole map. And yesterday I was looking at how to get some type of resource, which then I looked up online to be like, hey, how the fuck do I get this? And then people said, oh, you need to use this type of arrow. And I was looking around the map searching for a bow that had that certain type of arrow, because if you didn't know, in Horizon you have certain types of weapons, and each weapon has different type of ammos. So you can have fire ammo or ice ammo or poison ammo, you name it, they're all a bunch of things. So I was looking for a certain arrow that does tear damage and then blast things off. Was looking around the whole map for these arrows and then realized I just had the bow with me the whole time. So that was a fun thing for me to run around for like 30 minutes looking for a bow that was doing this certain type of arrow that I just had all the time. But yeah, if I would be stuck in that world for 24 hours, I would probably die because there are so many robot dinosaurs in that world that I will definitely not make it. But if I do, I would probably just be running around like Aloy is in my world and just searching for certain items and just running around to avoid as many fights as I can. Even though I am level 50 in the game, I'm still running around like a headless chicken when I see certain types of animals because some of them are super strong and some of them are just very annoying to defeat. I don't know what the specific name of this animal is, but I think it's like a shell snapper. I think it's shell snapper, something like that. But it's basically a giant turtle that digs itself into the ground and then attacks you with ice and whatever. But I was getting fucked up because my gear happens to be not very good against ice damage, and I didn't realize it while I was doing the fight, and then realized after. I was like, oh well, that's why I was getting killed so easily, or at least I didn't get killed, luckily, but like I was losing health like a maniac. Luckily realized what the issue was, but yeah, it will probably me running around gathering resources like I'm doing for the last 24 hours, I feel like, in Horizon, because I've been playing that game for like 70 hours and I've not really hit the high point of the story yet. So yeah, there's some many things I still need to do. But luckily, this game is keeping me entertained in those 24 hours that I've played, the past 24 hours, I should say. So, going back to your question, underscore Mr. underscore Cheeks, you're stuck for 24 hours in the last video game you played. What will you be doing during this time? For me, it's just trying to survive. I'm gonna gather resources, collect my berries, collect my sticks and stones, and everything to make the arrows, and then trying to survive as long as I can in the world full of robot dinosaurs and robot animals and whatever you can find in this world. Thank you for your question, Mr. Cheeks. Moving on to the third question of today, coming from user o-fish-io. And they ask, what's a food you hate not because of the taste, but because of the texture? I hate broccoli. And it's partly because of the taste, but it's mostly for the texture. I just don't like the weird... People always see broccoli as like a tree, you know what I mean? And then the top of the broccoli has those leafy things, and that shit that just makes me gag even thinking about it. And then the fact that when you cook them, there is sometimes water in like the stork or whatever the fuck you want to call that. Then when you bite that, then just explodes in your mouth, and it's absolutely disgusting. So yeah, I can make this a very long story. I never really liked broccoli. I actually threw up as a kid when I was forced to eat broccoli once. Like I tried to eat it and be like, oh, I'm a good boy, I'm trying to eat this. And then I just immediately throw everything up. Just got sick all over my plate. And then my dad got mad at me and then sent me to bed, something like that. But yeah, I was having an absolutely horrible time with broccoli because, I just don't like the texture of it. It's such a weird texture that I don't really know what to do with. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, going to your question, o-fish-io. What's a food you hate not because of the taste, but because of the texture? And I think I have to go with broccoli. That's the easiest one for me to just be like, ugh, that shit makes me gag thinking about it. Thank you for your question. Going on to the fourth question of today, coming from user Ninja X Gaming, and they ask, you meet a carbon copy of yourself. Personality is the exact same, only difference is the opposite sex. What's the thing you do first? I probably will just start screaming, because the thing is, like, I've always been told that I look very much like my sister, and we do. So seeing a female version of myself is probably just very similar to seeing my sister. It's gonna be a little weird, but if we have the same personality and exact interest and stuff like that, that would be fun, because then I have somebody to game with, and somebody to talk to about wrestling and about MMA and stuff like that, because I don't really have that right now, because those things are still very niche in the country I live in, and not many people. I also, I don't really talk to people that much. I rarely leave my house, especially nowadays. I have very little people to talk to. So yeah, meeting a carbon copy of myself that is a female, that would be very interesting. I think that this person is trying to get people to sleep with themselves, but I feel like that's fucking weird. Especially when, again, it's a person that looks like you and then is a female version of you. It's still weird, dude. So I'm not gonna do that. I think that it's gonna be a very easy answer for me, because it's just like, again, I would probably scream and then think like, what the fuck is going on? Because again, I look very much like my sister. So is it my sister? No, it's not. It's me. What the? You like wrestling? You like MMA? What the fuck? And then we'll probably just talk to her about that, and I don't know, live my life. I don't know. I'm not gonna have sex with myself. If that's what you're leaning towards, Ninja X Gaming, you dirty scallywag. So yeah, that would be my answer to your question, Ninja X Gaming. Thank you very much for your question. Moving on to the final question of the Ask Reddit subreddit for today, coming from user weird underscore confidence 7540, and they ask, you have the power to stop time. What's the first thing you do? So I've been thinking about this very long. I've been thinking about having superpowers since I was a kid, because that's what you do when you're a kid. You start thinking about what you would do for having superpowers. And of course, when you're a kid, you're a horny little kid. So you're only thinking about the horny things you can do. And with this, I would probably do that still. You know what I mean? Because like I always thought, like when you were a kid, it's like, what superpower would you have? And I would be like, I would just go invisible. Because if you go invisible, you can just do whatever and nobody would notice you. You can just walk into the girls' locker room and you would not be seen and stuff like that. But stopping time would be even better to do that shit with, because now I'm not only in the locker room, but they don't know I'm in the locker room, and they have no way for them to know I'm in the locker room. Stuff like that, because I can just, stop time, walk into the showers, see what they're doing, and then walk out. I know that this is very like a sexual harassment thing, and I get that. But it's so in jest. I don't have the ability to stop time. Or do I? You will definitely never know. I've also seen a couple of people say that they would sleep, and that would be Alan the King Drake for one. He said he would take a nap, and that is one of the things that is also very interesting, because yeah, you can technically stop time when you're tired, then sleep for 8 hours, and then start the time again, and then you can just continue on with your day, which is a very, very nice way to stay productive, because you can basically be productive 24 hours a day, which is fucking crazy to think about. So that would definitely be an option, but I like my option a little bit better, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, are there any other things we can do while we stop time? And some people are saying rob a bank, but I just don't like that. Also, how the fuck are you gonna rob a bank when you need to stop time? Like, how does that work? Because everybody else is frozen, the time is frozen, so how the fuck are you gonna make a withdrawal when time is frozen? Because you cannot put your card in the machine, you cannot put somebody else's card in the machine. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, going back to your question, weird underscore confidence 7540, you have the power to stop time. What's the first thing you do? Again, when I am able to stop time, I would just be a very horny kid. And I know I'm 23, about to turn 24 next month, but it's still the most intriguing thing for me to do, to just for one time just go, hey, we're gonna stop time, walk into the girls' locker room. I should say women's, because girls is a little bit weird. The women's locker room, and just look around. Just have a gander. Again, it's not what you're supposed to do. I get that. It's a bit, weird. It's on the edge. But what are you gonna do? I can stop time. I can just when they try to arrest me, I can just stop time, just go to another place and then start time again. And then they will never find me. It's impossible. So thank you for your questions, Weird Confidence. And now, moving to the final question for today. Of course, coming from the Am I the Asshole subreddit, asked by user Baby Wedding Throwaway. And they ask, am I the asshole for bringing my baby to a child-free wedding? My cousin lives a 6-hour drive from me and the rest of my family. A few months ago, we all drove over there for his wedding. Due to limited space, no children were invited to the wedding except the bride's young nieces and nephews. My baby was 10 months old at the time and I wasn't comfortable leaving him alone in an unfamiliar place with a stranger, which was a babysitter that my other cousins hired for their own kids. So I decided to bring him to the wedding. I wrote on the RSVP that I was bringing him, but he would be sitting on my lap and I would bring my own food for him. My cousin didn't say anything, so I assumed that he was okay with it. My baby cried at the ceremony. I quickly took him out of the room. At the reception, I had him with me the whole time in a body carrier. He didn't make much of a fuss and I thought everything was okay. After the wedding, my aunt, the groom's mom, confronted me and told me that I was rude for bringing my baby without permission. I explained that I wrote on the RSVP what I was planning to do, but my cousin didn't object. He said that my cousin and his bride had a problem with it, but the bride didn't want to start any drama because she doesn't know me well. My other cousin's baby was 7 months old at the time, and my aunt said that he had no problem leaving his baby with the certified babysitter, and I should have done the same. And some of my cousins were upset because they thought the groom gave me a special treatment by letting me bring my baby and making them leave their kids with a babysitter. I didn't mean to start any drama. Am I the asshole? I would say that you tried a little bit, not that hard, to definitely not be the asshole, but in the end, you are a little bit of an asshole. When they specifically say that this is a kid-free wedding, you should probably just listen to that and just be like, hey, this is a kid-free wedding. We need to start figuring things out. And you're saying that you didn't want to leave your baby with a stranger, but is there no other family member available for you? Because I see that your family is going to the wedding. I get that. But doesn't your boyfriend slash husband slash fiance, I don't know what they are, have family as well? So couldn't you bring them to like a grandma or like a cousin or uncle or whatever to just watch the kid for a couple of hours or a day, probably because it's 6 hours away? I feel like there are many more options for you to have considered with the baby and not bringing the kid to the wedding. Because again, they have specifically said that this was a kid-free wedding apart from these small children, the children that were there. But you bringing your baby it's just a bit annoying, and it's one of those things that it ruins the mood in many ways. In many ways, I want, because people always feel like on the edge, and then you bring your kid and then the kid is in a baby carrier, but then people don't really want to talk to you because they're afraid to wake up the baby and that the baby's going to yell and stuff like that. And your baby actually did yell during the ceremony, which is absolutely horrible. Like that sucks. When you want to have your wedding, and I'm assuming that there are maybe even like there are photographers and people maybe even filming this, and then you have a kid screaming in the background, that just sucks. Just think about it if that was your wedding, when you said like, hey, I don't want kids here, and then there is a fucking 10-month-old baby that is just yelling like a fucking maniac. That's something you don't want, so why the fuck do you want to wish that on anybody else? So I think that you tried a little bit to alleviate the pressure on yourself by writing on the RSVP to be like, hey, I'm bringing my kid. But if the person didn't react, maybe you should have followed up a little bit. And then again, you didn't have to leave the kid with the babysitter that was offered to you, but there are probably certain things that you could have brought your kids to a cousin or an uncle on your husband slash boyfriend side. You know, the kid has a father too, right? I'm assuming. There's a possibility that that's not the case, but I feel like there are more options for you out there that you could have explored and you didn't. So I'm sad to say that you are indeed the asshole, baby wedding throwaway. Thank you for your question. And that has been it for the Didn't Ask podcast for this week. I hope you liked the show this week. If you did, please leave a rating on Apple Podcast or Spotify, because both places have the ability to leave a rating, and that would help this show out very much so. So please do that. You can find this show on anchor.fm/didn't-ask-pod. You can find that link in the show description. Over here, you can find all the links that link out to your favorite podcast platforms like Podcast Addict, Pocket Cast, and Amazon Podcast. Over here, you can also find a button that says message. If you press that, you get the ability to record a voice memo for me where you can ask me a question personally. If you don't want your voice to be heard on this podcast, I completely understand. Just say it up front in your message, then I'll just read your question out myself. So I can still answer your question, but you don't have to hear your voice on air. That's me for this week. I will be back next week, and if you know what I'm doing in the meantime, best thing to do is to go to track.tv. That link will also be in the show description. Over here, you get an overview of all the TV series and movies I'm watching, sometimes as I'm watching them, which is really fun, so you can keep up with what I'm watching, and also ask me a question about any of those shows, because there are some fun shows going on right now that I'm watching. I'm watching Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm watching Miss Marvel, I have watched a couple of episodes of How I Met Your Father, and there are so many good things. All of these coming from Disney Plus. I am not sponsored, I can promise you that. I wish I was. But yeah, there are so many fun things that I'm watching, including wrestling. So go there and see what I'm doing, and you can ask me a question about that as well. Okay, that was enough talking for me for today. I hope to see you back next week. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.